Hello everyone, this is Bitnologic, coming at you again with another video. I just did my last one and right on to the next. I'm falling behind, so I need to catch up basically. But you know me, I'll rather do my best while I'm behind and catch up on my sleep after. But yeah, I hate being behind really, but since I made the mistake of promising this to you guys already, uh, this is what I'm doing right now. And since you can clearly see as I'm in my resting state, I'm doing this on the topic of hate. So I'm gonna try to find the answers to certain questions about hate. I had a pre-show call in my Hangout to talk to some other people and get their input, so it's not only about what I think, but to get some insights from other people as well. Because I realized it wouldn't be fair to just sit there and give my own opinion, but of course it's going to be very truthful from my perspective, but you need more than your own to try to paint a more complete picture of what it is. And I just gotta pause for a second because I can feel right now that my headset is not sitting perfectly straight and good. It feels like it's gonna tilt backwards, so give me a second and I'll fix it and come back right after. Yeah, like I said, it's fairly quick to fix it and hopefully, but like I said, I can never find a way to get the headset to sit comfortably with my weird head. You know, I'm not symmetrical at all because like I said, I was in an accident before I was born even, so well, whatever, you know, it is what it is. The question and topic is about hate. What is hate? Why does it exist? And why do we as people, as a species, allow it to exist? Where does it come from? What is it based on? And what are the options in terms of what are the opposites, if you will? Is there a way to avoid it? Or is it something that we just have to deal with? Because I'm probably gonna plug this plug out because it's really annoying to me right now because this cable is so much shorter, so I'll probably have to do, maybe not unplug it, but at least make an adjustment here because I know the cable for it is long enough for me to make that adjustment. So because the cable itself for the new charger that I'm using, not new, but you know, different chargers is probably a better term, is shorter than the other one. But yeah, Mama did a show that I was a part of called Love, and something happened to me recently, and I'm not saying that's the reason why I'm making this video, but I will admit to this. It was the inspiration for it. And I've been doing Hangouts particularly, and YouTube too, but this, what I'm saying and what I've seen, has mostly been connected with my experiences in Hangouts. So there was something I quickly picked up on, what I saw, the way people are, and I wouldn't like I said, it's with Hangouts that I've seen it, but I can't blame Hangouts for it. You know, I can't pin it on that. I don't know what it is and why it is like that. But I quickly learned, like I said, I quickly picked up certain things, and I quickly learned that this is going on. Maybe it's a problem in the, I wouldn't say community, but you know, like within us, wherever you are at the time, you can find it everywhere. So why is it so prevalent, right? Because hate, I mean, I have dealt with hate for a long time in my own life. Everyone has come across it. I know this. But when I got into YouTube and later Hangouts, I saw that it was prevalent. So I have all these questions because, like I said when we were doing the show about love, these two not only are the biggest words, and that's an understatement, it's not even the right phrasing, but to put it in layman's terms, they are the biggest words in mankind's vocabulary, basically. Love on the one side and hate on the other. And like someone said, you probably can't have one without the other. There can't be light without the darkness, because you wouldn't have something to compare it to. You wouldn't have the understanding of the opposite. Me, as I said in my mystical experience videos, I think it was, or it could have been in the Hilamalalayu video, but the point is, I've seen both. I've done both. But I'm not really much of a hateful person, but of course even me have expressed hate to some degree. It's a very human emotion. It's hard to understand why it's so easy to turn to that particular emotion. And as a Christian, even though some might find it hard to believe that I am one, we shouldn't hate. We're told we're not supposed to, because the Bible says love your enemies. But like I said, it's very easy to go there. Why is that? And let me see here. I don't know if this one is open right now, but I'm just checking to see what's going on. Sorry for the distraction, but it's just that that light is flickering like crazy. So, but yeah, it did slow down to a certain degree. I don't know what's causing it, because I'm not active like that right now. I don't know. It's a weird one. But anyway, let me minimize and not be distracted by it, basically. Because I'm telling you, to me, it's no coincidence that when I'm doing this, even though I went offline, the computer is still on. So I'll go even further. Just give me a second, guys, and I won't pause for this one. I will just lean over and pull the flap down, like I said, because it's just a distraction anyway. And when you're doing something like this, it's better that you have a situation where you can actually be fully focused and on what you're doing, you know? Because this is important to me, and it should be important to everyone. And I will try my best to do my best, because, you know, this one I probably should have had some kind of script for, but you know, I mess up even with a script, so I'd rather try to do my best on the spot, because I'm best on the spot. But yeah, let me see if I can start at the right place and tell you, try to remember the first time I came across hate. Because like I said, I think you don't have to be really old until you realize the first time you experience hate. I think most of us has even experienced it. Like I said, there's levels of hate. And what I can only refer to as expressed hate, because it's not real hate, there's a big difference there. But what I would call expressed hate is very common. It's like they say, it's commonplace. But it doesn't mean actual hate, because in my definition, hate means you feel so strongly against someone that you would even like to kill them. That's actual hate to me. But expressed hate is very common. We probably see it, even if it's not directed to us ourselves, we see it probably like every day in some way, shape, or form. And I'll try to remember the first time I came across hate. And yeah, I think I wasn't even old enough to register this expression of hate. But I heard about it later, as I grew older. And I guess the first time that hate was in my life in some way was when I was, like after I had been born. Because at the time, my grandfather wouldn't acknowledge the fact that I was his grandson and that I was the son of his own son, basically. So what he said at the time, and this is not much money in any type of currency almost, I would say. I don't know, of course, but it's not big bucks even here. So, but it is a couple of thousand, in my currency. And what my grandfather on my father's side said at the time was 2 grand to whoever shoots the mother and the kids, or kills the mother and the kid. I don't know how he said it, but something like that. Just from the fact that he didn't believe that I was his grandson. That was the root of his statement. And also the fact that he was a drunk and he would get like that. He would become mean when he had been drinking sometimes. And he would say stuff like that. But this one was the first one, I think, that was in my personal life that I knew about hate. There was basically, he put a bounty on my head just after I was born. And not only me, but my mother too. Because maybe he knew that I was his grandson, but maybe he hated the fact. Could be that, I don't know. But he basically put a bounty on me and my mother. So I don't know if that was like 1,000 a pop, or, or there was some differentiating between whose bounty was bigger, basically. I don't know. But yeah, that's what happened. And it took him quite a long while to come around. I would say I want to be sure here, because I was 16 when the time I was in school in Fauske. And I had this one friend with me from there to my place. That's the first time I had a friend come with me to my place where I lived. Because, in Fauske we always hang out together, me and him and this third friend. Or not third friend, but it was 3 of us, basically. Me and him and this other guy. And this one of them came with me to my place. And we went to my uncle, who was living in that house and also creating moonshine. So we went there, I think, like I said, I would have been probably like 16, and we bought a bottle from him. Me and my friend split the price between us, and we bought a bottle of 40. It started out at 90, but it was like watered down to 40. So, but like I said, then a couple of years after that, so I don't know exactly how old I was, but I would say I was at least 18. A couple of years after that, then my grandfather finally came around, and he invited me to come there. And he wouldn't like shake my hand and apologize for what he said and other things, that wasn't him. Like I said, he was a drunk, and he had these weird things that were kind of like in the old days, if you know what I mean. So his way, his method, without technically apologizing, was to pour me a drink and drink with me that drink. And at that time he told me also that I was supposed to get the house after he was gone. But of course he never put it on paper, so even though I got some money when he finally passed, because he was sitting in what we call urskiftet bo. I don't know what that would be in English, but it means basically until the final, because my father had already died at the time, and the way it works is that when you're in that situation, and it includes, in this case, him, my grandfather, he had to die for me to get not only my father's inheritance but his as well. That was the time it became final, because it wasn't arranged like that in advance. It wasn't arranged to the point where I got my father's first and then my grandfather. I had to wait for him to die legally to have my, not only my father's inheritance but his as well. So since I was the only one of his fathers, I didn't only get my father's share, but I also got that share from my grandfather. So I had 2 shares of the inheritance. So I was the one single, and also because it's basically like me taking my father's place in a way. So I get the same as my uncle did. And my aunt was already dead, so she wasn't an issue, but her kids also got 1 share that they split between them. But yeah, he had said that I would get the house, and he never put any papers on it, so I just got my father's share and my grandfather's share in my father's place when he died. So I never got the house or anything. And that's just another side of my story. And a good piece of advice to you people, if you are getting up in age especially, make sure to have your papers in order, because if you don't, those people that you have plans for in the sense of your inheritance, those people will suffer in some way or another, because they will be left with a mess. And in my case, like I said, I had to wait for quite a few years after my father died until I got his share, and then also my grandfather's share, where I basically took my father's place as his only living offspring. But yeah, that was the first time, the bounty, if you will, let's call it that, the bounty. That was the first time I experienced hate in my own personal life, directly connected to me. And so I know that it's a weird one for sure, but I also think it's kind of like a basic thing within us as a species. We have this knack, if you will, for that emotion, that expression of emotion, that thought, that idea, that action, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is. And there's levels to it, especially when I say expressed hate. Because like I said, real hate, if you had a gun or a knife or whatever, and the person is right in front of you, you'll be able to kill in that situation. I'm sure of it. But expressed hate is not actual hate. It's just something or other that you say, whether you actually use the word hate or not in that sentence, it can be classified as hate on a level, but it's not actual hate, because most people in that type of situation wouldn't likely kill the other person, but they have a very, very strong dislike for them, and for example, they might even threaten them or talk shit behind their back on the town or something like that. False accusations, it can take many expressions basically. So I do think that hate is a very basic human emotion, very primal one, maybe. I wouldn't say it comes from the fight or flight thing, but it's equally primal, I think. The only way for me as a Christian to try to explain it through that lens would be it's part of original sin. It's part of this stain on our cloak, if you will. It's not a generational curse. It's not something we're born with like that through our family or something. It's something we as a species have within us, I believe, because it's so present within us. So I do believe in some way it's connected to what I call, not only me call, it's not my words, but what's called original sin. That's why it's called that. It's original. It's from the very beginning. And of course, if you don't believe, you're going to have a different explanation for it. But as I said to the people I was talking to in the pre-show, the pre-video call in the room, I do believe it's also very much connected to ego. Because logically, if you move away from ego, you're gonna turn to love, I believe. So, living within ego, you're more likely to express hate. Does that make sense to you? You understand what I mean? And every one of us, let me stress that again, every one of us is guilty of this sin, if you will. I'm using the term sin here loosely, but this action, this feeling, this mindset, whatever you want to call it, everyone is guilty of it to a certain degree at some point or another in life. Maybe not all, like literally all, but most of us. We fall victim to this mechanism, and we do feel like that. Like me, for example, I can tell you another side where I'm the one expressing it to a certain degree. When I have people walking by my house, whether they're sober or drunk, shouting and being loud and obnoxious, basically, I get frustrated. And I know I don't hate them really, but I'm annoyed by them to the point where I'm starting to connect to those feelings. So I would say something in here, in this room. And I remember one time I had my window open and I was sitting here on my couch and I got so frustrated, I basically yelled. I was like, why don't you shut the fuck up? In my own language, I was yelling this. And then one of the girls in that group picked up that someone was yelling this message and she replied, "No, you shut up." She didn't know where the sound was coming from, but she did pick up what was said. So in that situation, both her and me were at odds with each other. And like I said, it's not like actual hate, but it's on the scale, I would say, where you lose your temper, you get frustrated, and you express this feeling like, oh, why don't these people, like you want them to go away in a way, not like you want them to die, but I guess in those type of situations, even though that probably would create more sound, you'll probably be like, I wish they had, like I did that once actually, that was scary to me. That's probably the scariest expression of hate that I've done myself. Because I had this one friend, a Danish guy, and he was a great guy in many ways. But just like me, he had his flaws. And so I was with him and we came to this shop together, me and him. And I saw this great looking woman. She must have been at least 40, I would guess. Or really close to it, or just above 40, right? But she looked amazing. I mean, literally amazing. She looked so good. And my expression at the time that I was trying to convey was that she looked amazing, thinking according to her age, right? That she was probably close to 40 or even past 40. And I said this to my friend, and as soon as I said it, because he used to live in Copenhagen, like I said, he was a Danish guy, And as soon as he heard it, because he had already gotten this impression of me, and I didn't mean it like that at the time. I am a very sexual being. I admit that. But this time I didn't mean it in a sexual way. I just meant it like, wow, she looks good for her age. That was all it was. But since he had heard me and connected me and misjudged me to a certain degree, which is another form of hate in a way, when you misjudge people like that and you use it against them like that. That's a form of hate too. But he was like, he had lived in Copenhagen, he had seen prostitution, he had seen strip clubs, titty bars, everything like that, drugs, whatever, you name it, he had seen it all. So he was like tired of that stuff, right? So as soon as I mentioned it, and he had this impression that I was really, really bad about something like that, he had a strong reaction. And so it became really bad. You know, he had a really bad reaction. He didn't like go out of his way to call me names or turn to violence, but he was clearly angry, clearly aggressive, clearly upset, clearly hateful to a certain degree. I don't remember now what he said, but it was just a bad moment between us. And I had to just back off and go all quiet for him to calm down, because he was so sensitive to those things because of his previous situation in Copenhagen and what he had seen there. And then I was like I said, I couldn't talk back because he was so upset, right? So I said a little prayer, if you will, you know, a little wish that I was like, he's wrong, you know, because I know he's wrong, right? So I'm wishing for him to be, what do you guys call it? Like taken down a notch or two, right? To come to his senses, if you will. And I made that wish. And I said it like this within my mind. I wish he get, we call it like a caramel or something like that. It means not literally, you know, that's the funny part. I didn't mean it literally, like punched in the face, but like that was my figuratively speaking impression in my mind that I had, the thing that was on my mind. I wish he get like punched in the face proverbially to calm down a bit, you know, and don't be so judgmental. And what happened was, he was out riding his bike once, and when he came to cross that, he was far away from here. It's a little bit outside of the center, you know, the centrum, as we call it, down by the harbor. And there's a place there where there's some train lines. And as he was crossing the train lines, the what you call it, the rails of the railroad, if you will, because it's not a railroad like you think, but it's only used for the industrial use here. So when he came to that place, crossing that railroad crossing from the places down by the harbor, the shops and whatnot, to move on to the main road and the bike path, he got his wheel stuck between the rail bar, the metal, and the asphalt. His wheel got completely stuck, and he flew across his bike and landed on his elbow and broke his elbow. And so when that happened, I was like, oh damn, I shouldn't have said anything, because he was literally out of commission for some time, you know. And it was just, I can't prove it, but it was just because I made a little wish. So hate works, unfortunately. And the more upset you are, especially like I was, I felt like I've been done wrong, and so I wished for him to be taken down a notch or two, and it happened. So, but I'm gonna pause now or stop it and get ready to do part 2. Stay tuned for more on the topic of hate.